Really, Ira? 2 days in a row? Take it away, I guess.
Welcome to League One Fun, presented by the Beautiful Game Network and brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and Golden Goal Press. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast app. I'm Ira Jersey, and that voice you heard was a man who I talked to just yesterday, Jason, who's currently leading in the polls. We did our mid-season all-star game draft team, and he is currently winning about 65 to 35. I need you peeps to understand that we're trying to score a lot of goals. My team would win 7-5, I think, if it actually played.
Against Orlando? I think so too.
Fair enough. So, Jason, you can find that. We're having a Twitter poll. It'll be open until what time on Thursday, Jason?
Tomorrow till 5.
So Thursday until the close of business East Coast time, so 5 p.m. New York time. Unfortunately, I have to bring things down a little bit, Jason, because yesterday, right before we recorded that particular show, we received some bad news. It turns out that a member of the Richmond Kickers community, Coach Charlie Slagle, who was a longtime soccer coach, and he was for 21 years the coach of Davidson College. He actually was the coach who coached the ownership group of the Richmond Kickers, while they were in school, and brought them all the way up to the semifinals of the College Cup.
Wow.
Back in the early 90s. A real legend in the soccer community. He was the coach, the president of United Soccer Coaches. I had the pleasure of shaking his hand once. I can't say that I knew him, but he was by all accounts, a wonderful person, a great soccer fanatic. Elliot from River City 93 mentioned to Jason and I yesterday that he was working with him on a number of things, fan experiences and community engagement stuff, which is what his role was at the Richmond Kickers. But he was just an amazing gentleman. And Jason, do you have anything to add about for our condolences to this legend, really, of U.S. soccer?
Yeah, no matter what's going on the field, you can see year after year that Richmond Kickers have one of the best communities in U.S. soccer, and this is why. And so my thoughts and prayers go out to them at this time for that loss, because it is a big loss, not just for their team, but for soccer and for multiple people in this country.
I think it was really cool that Elliot mentioned that Matt Spear, the president of the Richmond Kickers, actually called him personally to tell Elliot the news, because Elliot had been working so closely with Coach Charlie.
And that gives you an idea of just how close, that family is in Richmond.
Yeah, for sure. So our condolences to everyone, and I hope that everyone else in U.S. League One and the broader soccer community will join us in wishing them well during this time of loss. To move on to other a little bit cheerier news in general, Forward Madison signed 2 new players this past week, both on loan from Memphis 901 FC, 24-year-old left-footed midfielder and Wisconsin native Lewis Bennett, and also 24-year-old forward Oliver White. Daryl Shore, the coach of Forward Madison, noted that they would mainly be depth players, but he did expect them both to have impacts right away. Any thoughts on these signings here, Jason?
Yeah, so the one that both of them stand out to me for 2 different reasons. So I think Louis Bennett is definitely one of the players that kind of fits the scheme that they have, a midfielder that can also score and can also be, put in different positions, whether he be on the wing. So it looks like they're going all in on this attacking midfielder scheme that they've got going on. His dad was actually, or I think is still currently, the head coach at Marquette. So I think that's how that connection happened. It's always good to have a team that's so embedded into their own community like Ford to be able to bring in another Wisconsin native. And then the other reason that, it's interesting to me to see a Ford on there. So listening to, Coach Shore talk about him, he said that he is a fast player, has that pace and has a very high soccer IQ and makes those runs, in between defenders. And I'm wondering if this depth has anything to do with Mason Toye, just because we haven't seen Mason Toye in a while. And I don't know if that's Minnesota saying, hey, we need him on the bench every week. I know there's been a lot of double game weeks in MLS on top of US Open Cup. So maybe that's something to where we say, hey, we can't wait on Mason Toy forever. Let's go ahead and get some depth up there just in case our guys start getting tired.
Great. Yeah, I think that, there could be interesting signings. I look forward to seeing them get on the pitch and integrate into that system. Forward's really been on a decent run in the month of June and has an outside chance here of making the playoffs. There's still, and we'll talk about this later, how tight, really packed, really 3 through 8 really are right now. Yep. So 2 players were released this past week from different teams. Jeff Michaud was released from Forward, and Ricky Espin was released from Lansing. Per club policy, we do not disclose the nature of the violation for which this is an internal matter, said Forward Madison in their press release. And Coach Shore said the team rules were violated for something.
Yeah.
Lansing said Ricky Espin and the team mutually parted ways. Do you have any other color on this? I know that that there might be other developments in this situation.
So Coach Shore went on Let Me Be Forward for Madison's podcast, and they asked him about it. And that's basically when he said, hey, we're not going to talk about it, but he confirmed that, Jeff broke a team rule. And because he broke a team rule, it was, best suited to release him. And I think the Ricky Espin thing's a little different. We probably won't know why, but it was a mutual release. And as soon as he got released, or maybe right before, he had tweeted a picture of an airplane with a soccer ball and a description that said something like 2 weeks or 3 weeks away, or he had a certain amount. I think it was like 18 days away. So that might be a sign that he's signing with somebody else, right? It might be something to where he didn't feel like he was getting enough out of Lansing, and Lansing didn't think that he fit their system. And so he probably was looking for another team, got the deal, and because they have a good relationship, mutually parted ways. And like I said, I don't think it has anything to do with his performance, because even though he only shot the ball 4 times, he scored 3 times when he shot it. So it might just be a system thing, right? He played a good amount of minutes, but because of the system and because they're pressing, they're more fast paced, with him being a bigger guy, Alex Bruce just kind of fits that system better. Pato fits that system better. So, hopefully it's just a mutual depart for both of them, and it both works out for both teams.
We'll have to look out, because if he's going on trial or he's going to sign somewhere else, maybe he's going for a physical, something like that. It is preseason over in Europe, so it's completely possible that maybe he'll end up, in a Dutch league or the lower tier somewhere in Germany, perhaps. So we'll have to look out for where Ricky ends up, and we wish him the best. Also, Jason, this is something you noticed, and that was that FC Tucson has someone going up to a U23 national team.
Yes, and this is what I love about this league. Like, I want to see these young players get the opportunities that they probably would not have had they were not playing consistent minutes or not playing in a professional league. So FC Tucson's Raheem Summersall, he received the call up to St. Kitts U23 team, and this is big because with the recent League of Nations and the Gold Cup, you see how Curacao did, you see how Bermuda did. You have these teams and these small Caribbean island teams that are kind of having that pendulum swing their way, and there's a lot more excitement and there's a lot more dedication. When you watch that Guyana playing game, it was just stressful and dedication from those players. And so if you go on FC Tucson's Twitter, you can see Raheem talking about it a little bit. St. Kitts just missed out on the Gold Cup. I think it came down to their last League Nations game. And so for him to know that team is on the uprise and they're right there, and he has a chance to play in the Gold Cup and get more exposure and move up into to different leagues, this is a big deal for him. And I think this is what we want to see for a lot of players in this league. This is something that I think is really cool and shows the benefits of being in League One and why this league exists.
It's really interesting that, U.S. Soccer, I was listening to the Total Soccer Show today, and they were talking about Copa America. And one of the things is even countries like Venezuela, which you would think, a large population country with a soccer culture, they don't have a domestic league and they don't export a lot of players to Europe. And so a lot of their players have come and played in MLS and then also in the USL Championship. So, League One, I think as it grows, you'll see more of these international type players from smaller countries or countries where they're not quite as developed in terms of infrastructure, or their federations are small. I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, I was at the Bermuda match up at Red Bull Arena, and Bermuda's only 65,000 people, so they can only go so far in their domestic leagues. They wind up going over to the UK or coming to the US. A lot of those players, and a number of them have spent time here.
And the difference is some of those Caribbean nations have that European ties, right? So they have
French, like Curacao,
right?
Half of them play in Holland, right?
Yeah, and then you have Haiti, right, who have French players who can do dual citizenship. Guyana has a couple English players that have Guyanese background. But so yeah, this is an easier outlet, right? Because those are the best of the best. And you look at USL Championship, what's the largest demographic in the USL Championship? Caribbean players.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, so on to a little bit of other news. The FC Dallas U19s are on their way to the Development Academy Cup. The finals for the U.S. Soccer Federation Development Academy will be during the week of the MLS All-Star break down in Orlando. So for a couple of players, it'll actually be kind of a home team. But this is both the girls and the boys Development Academy finals for the various age groups will be there. All six finals will be there. Importantly for North Texas is that Tanner Tessman played almost every minute of the DA tournament out in California. That's why he missed a few games. He was back this past weekend.
Yeah, and then was a beast this weekend.
So yeah, 100% a beast. So
that kid's got tons of energy.
But he might miss another match because of the DA Cup. So good on Tanner doing double duty. Quite frankly, it's almost unfair, right? That you have a League One professional player playing a ton of minutes. I mean, can you imagine if Ricardo Pepi was playing for that team? I think there's a couple of other players who obviously qualify as well. And then finally, just as a note, not a huge surprise, also staying on this North Texas thing, is that Ronaldo Davis was named the League One Player of the Week. Yeah. Maybe we can. Normally, we talk about this toward the end of the show, but we have something else to talk about today. I think that he had a good game. Obviously, he scored a great goal, game-winning goal as well, right? If memory serves. I didn't know that. I just watched the match.
It was the dagger.
Oh, that's right. That was the third goal.
But he was also responsible for the first goal, and we'll talk about that more when we talk about the game. I don't have a problem with it. You could have gave it to Arturo, who had a beast of a game last game, and then even the game before where they lost 4-1. They still performed well. So, I have no problem with it.
Fair enough. Yeah. I was thinking Gomez too, from also North Texas, but basically North Texas had a very good game. So someone from that team was probably going to get it. Okay. Shall we get into results, Jason?
Let's do it.
All right. So Friday night was actually the second match, because we reviewed one match last week, was the second match of week 14. Halfway through the season, it was Toronto FC 2 scored 1 goal versus Forward Madison.
I'm going to have to stop you, though. Yeah. Was it Friday night or was it Friday
afternoon
at 4 o'clock? Because that's the only time we play at Toronto. I'm just saying.
Friday evening.
Friday at 4, get that pre-dinner meal going.
Well, they did not have to turn on the lights. Actually, I was looking at that pitch during the match when I was watching this match. Do they actually have lights on that field? I don't know if they do.
Shout out to the Canadian soccer dude. He had tweeted me a while ago and had mentioned that's why they play early, is either that they don't have the lights or right now they're doing work on the lights, and because of that, they can't play into the night.
Yeah, I didn't notice the poles on the far side of the pitch where the cameras were facing. So maybe there are lights behind, but if there's not lights on both sides, you get weird shadows.
And I think that's the issue.
You don't really want to play in those conditions. So maybe that's the reason. Maybe we're giving them a hard time for nothing.
Yeah, listen, I like the 4 o'clock games.
I like the replays of the 4 o'clock games.
Yeah, can you do it in Toronto on a Friday on a 4 o'clock night? That's the new. League One version of Stoke on a rainy Wednesday.
Well, I don't know if it would have to be at 4. I mean, they're in Toronto. They're far north, more north than here.
That's the tradition now. It got to be 4.
You got to be 4. You got it. Okay, but anyway, so it was 1-1. The scoring started right at the end of the first half with my striker from my All-Star team, Mr. Peruzza, scoring a goal. This was a really fun goal. So the center back for Toronto, Mr. West, gets the ball about 20 yards into his attacking half. He slows it down. Peruzza actually checks back to the ball. West gets Peruzza the ball. Peruzza just flicks it over to Gideon Waja, and Waja just one-times it back to him. Actually, the pass from Peruzza wasn't great, so Waja actually did a great job just to get his laces on it and get the ball back to Peruzza, who had then beaten 2 defenders. He was not exactly one-on-one with the keeper, but he was just inside the 18, shoots it one time with his left foot, volleys it right into to the lower right of the goal past Silvestre, and it was then 1-0 going into the break. Jason, this first half was until that moment, I wasn't sure if either team really was going after it, right? It wasn't the high energy, high power first half that I'm kind of used to now from Forward Madison, especially.
Yeah. And Toronto loves scoring at the end of the first half. So this is I think the 3rd game in a row where they've scored at the end of the first half. So that's something that teams need to take note of. And I don't know if they just wait and conserve their energy, but this was an interesting first half because even though Ford only really had 2 key passes in the first half, they had the best chance. And if it wasn't for a double save by Kevin Silva in the 33rd minute, who had probably 3 incredible saves this game. So shout out to the Bethlehem native, Pennsylvania, what's up? He stood on his head and, allowed for Toronto to not have to chase a lead, because Ford, I think, had the best 2 chances in the first half before, Peruzza came in. And Toronto had 5 key passes, but outside of that Peruzza one, there's probably only one other that was a really, really good look at goal. So it was an interesting first half. I think they turned it around in the second half, and that's when Ford really started going at it. And you saw, Tariq Muhammad had to, come in and make an immediate impact. But yeah, we're talking about the second half. Let's get into it. So
the second half, I feel like both teams came out of the second half a little bit differently than the first, where Forward in particular just wanted to play with more energy. I mean, that's what it seemed like to me. So they were definitely moving the ball faster. The pace was much different in the second half than the first. There were a couple of chances both ways. There were a lot of tackles. I mean, both teams, just looking at some of the statistics for this, both teams had over 450 passes. I mean, both teams had the ball a lot and were connecting very short passes, little 1-2s, and a lot of those were in the second half. And a majority of them were in the second half, actually.
But you know what the difference was for Ford in the second half, right? Do you know what the difference for their offense is?
That Paolo Jr. subbed in the 75th minute?
Not necessarily.
Subbed out, actually, right?
Yeah,
Paolo Jr. subbed out.
Carter Manley, again, he doesn't show up on the stat sheets. Him overlapping is so important. So Carter comes on and immediately starts doing that and immediately starts creating chances. I think he had 3 chances created in the second half. Silva comes up with a tremendous save on Tenario after Don Smart sends in another cross that comes in from Manley. And then they did the exact same play maybe 3 minutes later, and except this time Tenario finishes it. Yeah, and all that stems from Manley's overlapping, and because of that, he gets space. So when he gets space, when the defenders are giving him space because they know he's going to move up, he has these passes down the line and he hits Don Smart in stride. So now Smart has a good one-on-one situation and has room to cross because he doesn't have to come back and get the ball. And that's why I'm saying Manley is a difference maker when it comes to them. Don Smart, as amazing as he's been, I don't know if he gets to have all the service into the box that he does if it's not for those passes from Manley to hit him in stride down the side.
Yeah, so that what's interesting about that whole play that led to the goal and the 2 or 3 other chances that occurred before it was for one thing, that Don Smart, is a great player, and I'm happy that he's on my All-Star team and not yours.
Wow. But this is what we're doing on the show. Okay.
Okay. I'm kidding. He was the only one that you would really lament. Come on. But the fact is that Forward has been attacking much more down its left side, and like Paolo Jr. did not have a great night, right? That's one of the reasons he came out in the 75th minute. He tried, right? So he was trying things, but a lot of the stuff that he was trying didn't come off. I think that they, Toronto's right side just figured out how to cover and take Paolo Jr. out of the game. So that's why when Danny Tenorio came in, he was like that spark, and he kept on making those far post runs that, which is very similar to what Paolo Jr.'s been doing most of the season. And Don Smart, was able to find him. Interestingly, on that goal, there was no assist because Don Smart passed the ball back to who did he pass it back to? Silva, right? No. Who did he pass the ball back to? Oh, is this the one where Silva gets his hands on it, right?
Yeah, I think Silva tips it. That's what.
Yeah, so Silva tipped it. That's why he didn't get the assist, but it falls to Tenorio, and then Tenorio scores. That's what it was. That's what it was. Toronto, by the way, was not offside at all in this game, and meanwhile, Forward was offside 11 times, mostly in the second half, just showing you how much they were pressing for a goal.
Funny you bring this up. So I had this in my notes, and then I also got a tweet, question from, I believe it was from the Canadian Soccer Dude, friend of the podcast, and he asked, what do I feel about Toronto home field offside advantage, or what's going on with the offside at home? So to give you guys an idea of what we're talking about, Toronto have now won the offside battle at home, with opponents having 40 offside calls and Toronto only having 3. Which is wild.
I did not know that statistic. That is amazing.
Wild. That is a wild statistic. You talk about home field advantage, and I don't know if teams, just because it's the first time they're playing there, I don't get it. I don't know if like Toronto is just the best
Canadian referees.
Yeah. And maybe that's what he's bringing up, right? Like, we need to go and maybe we need to do some investigative journalism and see, Toronto, are they TFC Academy referees? What's going on with it? Because 40-3 is absolutely insane.
Yeah. So I'd be curious to know what the what it is otherwise. I mean, it could just be that TFC is not offside a lot at all, right? So it could be, and they do play a relatively high line, right? So it's not surprising that other teams get called for a lot of offsides against them. But not having a single offside or two is just pretty amazing. I mean, one of the reasons for that, for sure, is that they don't play a lot. TFC doesn't play a lot in the wing play, right? So it's not like they're always trying to play through instead of trying to go to the wings and then cross the ball in. So you don't have people trying to get in behind all the time in the same way that other teams attempt to do that. So that could be one of the reasons. Yeah,
but and then before we go, 2 quick shout outs. Silvestre had a huge game-winning save in the 85th minute. He made a quick decision to go off his line, and that's the difference between good keepers and great keepers, because had he hesitated and stayed on his line, it would have been an easy open shot for Toronto, and they would have scored late like they love doing, and would have won at home. So I think it's an important point for Ford. Ford has a lot, like I said, last show, Ford's schedule is ridiculous for the next 4 or 5 games. So for them to pick up a point on the road to a place where no team has won yet, I think that's a important win for them. And then, shout out to Don Smart. I'm going to give him the assist, even though the keeper got a tip. But you know what the better assist was my man Bunk Anderson tying the goalkeeper's shoe. Love it from every goalkeeper in the world, coming from me. Thank you, Bunk Anderson. It is much appreciated, because so many times I've just had to tuck my shoelace under my shoe and hope for the best. And so
Bunk Anderson scores headed goals on set pieces and knows how to tie shoes.
Yes, love it.
Those are 2 things that we know about. Okay, moving on. The next match was Orlando City B0 versus Greenville Triumph 2, and this was there were probably as many birds flying around as there were attendance. It was 144 people in attendance in this one,
which is a good thing, because Orlando played trash.
Yeah, it was not particularly good. Orlando had, this is your favorite stat, I know, but Orlando had 58% of the ball.
Don't matter.
And guess how many shots on net they had?
0.
That's correct. So, they had 4 total shots, 58% possession. They were offside 3 times. They connected 512 passes.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter because Greenville said, here, you have the ball. When we have it, we're going to be efficient. We're going to be clinical. And in the 41st minute, Jake Keegan ends up getting the ball to Cameron Saul. Actually, this was quite a nice move. I mean, this was not this was basically efficient possession by Greenville. So OCB, this has been OCB's problem the whole time. Like, even when they were scoring a lot of goals, which they haven't been the last couple of weeks, but when they were scoring a lot of goals, they kept on letting in a ton. And it's really their in general, their defensive discipline that's being a problem. So when you watch this goal, go back and watch the replay on USLLeague1.com. And watch what 3 defenders do. All they do is pivot with the ball and try and chase the ball. I mean, instead of staying on their man, letting the guy who's closer close down the ball. So what happens is Bermudez gets the ball. So Gomez gets just a great gets the ball on the outside, gets the ball to Bermudez, who makes an end line run. Bermudez cuts it back, and then I don't know exactly how Saul did this, but he got the ball and turned while there were 3 defenders on him. So he just screened the ball, but the fact that he received it in all of that traffic was pretty impressive in and of itself. He gets the ball back to remind me who he passed it back to. He passed it back to Muhammad, and then Muhammad squared the ball to a wide open Jake Keegan, the guy who scored 2 goals in the previous game, and is the leading scorer on the team, is left wide open at the far post. Gomez gets the ball. Yeah, not good at all. But Keegan can't shoot, right? Because the goalkeeper does a really good job to move over and cut off the angle. But then Keegan very smartly just hits it hard and low back across goal, right across the 6-yard box, and Saul's there for the tap in. And that's all they would have needed. They scored much later on, but ultimately, like, this was a great sense of spell of possession for Greenville. Terrible defending from OCB. What can OCB do at this point, do you think, Jason, to kind of get any points? And do you think that their experiment going back into USL, having a USL team, is working?
So this game was just very bad from the start. Orlando, I think this is like an off game. I know they're already not a great team, but this was just, I haven't seen them play like this since the beginning of the season. They just weren't cohesive. They had 1 key pass in the first half. And it wasn't like you were saying, they were just passing the ball endlessly, just passing it. It wasn't like Greenville was pressing. Greenville only had 4 interceptions the whole game. So it's not like Orlando would get in the midfield and Greenville was pressing and winning the ball. Greenville just kind of let them do whatever they wanted to do. And Orlando just wasn't able to create chances. And I think that's their thing, right? If Souza and Simeon and those guys just don't get down the wing and beat you with speed, there's no real creativity in that midfield. And I think that's what they're really missing at right now. And I don't like this experiment to where they're playing with 3 different strikers every game and subbing in Osei-Wusu in the 60th minute. And so they need to pick, 1 striker, try him out for 2 games and give this team some kind of a game plan to work with offensively. Because right now, I just don't feel like they have a game plan. And I think that's the major issue. It's either, all right, if we're not winning the ball down the side and you're not going to win it down the side against Greenville, then what? What is your plan?
And if your goal is to develop players, I get it, right? You want to try out different people. You want to maybe sub in different pieces. But at the same time, chemistry matters, and having familiarity with everyone in the team matters. So, if you have 18 players and you're going to rotate, 6 of them in the field players, that's fine, right? But you want to do it probably a couple of games at a time. You don't want to, basically switch every single game. Have someone play for 3 games and then someone else start for 3 games, and then sub in the guy 3 times who's going to play the next 3 games, so he gets some minutes and gets the game experience. But I feel like they're just not doing it right? Because you look at TFC2, you look at North Texas, you look at FC Tucson, and they're doing something right, obviously, that OCB just isn't.
Fun fact, Greenville averages about 13 clearances a game before this one. They had 4 clearances this game. It's just that there's nothing to do. Dallas J had no saves. He had 1 punch for the whole game, and that was his contribution.
But when there's 4 shots and none of them on target, what are you going to do? I mean, I don't even think he caught a cross. Did he even catch a cross?
No, he literally had no catches.
OCB attempted 2 crosses the whole game.
Yeah. So and that's what I'm saying. So they're Greenville shut down there, and that's what they do. Like going down the side, there's no creativity. And I think between that, not having a creative number 10 or creativity in the midfield, and them constantly subbing forwards. Listen, like you said, it needs to be at least 2 games in a row. Give these people a start and have them play the whole game. You're literally taking 4 different strikers and just subbing them every 60 minutes, and they're not going to develop or form any chemistry doing that. I hate what they're doing with that system.
So let's turn things back a little bit to Greenville. So a couple of things. One, Bermudez and Gomez, they were both on my sheet, and I ultimately didn't pick them. They were kind of my next people that I probably would have picked. Did we make a mistake not having either of them on our All-Star teams?
When Gomez especially is hot, that's when Greenville is cooking, right? That's when Jake Keegan gets those attempts. That's when Saul feels more comfortable moving around. Yeah, I think he's like Bermudez is always going to do what Bermudez does, right? He's great on the ball. He's fast. He's a good defender, and he's going to bring crosses in. But I think Gomez brings a little more opportunity for Greenville and a little more creativity, because the one thing Greenville struggled with all year is not finishing their crosses. So when that's not happening, if he's able to then create something from the midfield, go back and be a box-to-box or intercept the ball and spring a counter, now you have different options. Now you have a different offensive ability. So yeah, when he's hot, he's hot. I just don't know if he's been consistently hot enough this year for me to have included him on my team. But yeah, I think he was definitely, a goal. He scored a goal in the 83rd minute. He was a difference maker in this game for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And he had that, quite frankly, I mean, he didn't quite have the MLS assist, but he started that whole play for the first goal as well. So that's, he found Bermudez there in the channel. Also, the other thing that I noticed about Greenville this game, and I have to go back and remind myself the previous game or two, but it looked like Jake Keegan was playing a little bit further behind, right? He was playing more as kind of a number 10 maybe, and had more of a free floating option, kind of like a second striker, and while Saul was more of the target man in the system. And if you look at the heat map, he was Keegan was kind of both right and left and up and back. He definitely fell back a little bit more than he had in previous games when he was the number 9. Do you think that is something that Coach Harkes might try going forward I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not taking any credit for this, by the way, but we mentioned before that Keegan kind of needed a strike partner. Could Saul be that strike partner and Keegan be the other guy?
I think what Keegan does well is draw, and you can go back and watch, he draws defenders with him, and it gives Saul space. And the thing that you don't want to do is give Saul space, because I think he's their best shooter. I think he's clinically the best striker on that team. And so that allows him to have the space. And I think what was going on, especially earlier in the year, and Chris used to talk about it, Saul would have to come back further to the midfield to get the ball. And you want him close to the net as possible and at getting some kind of space. And so I think that would be a great strike partnership, to be able to have Keegan work those sides, go, intersect in the middle and just draw defenders away so that Saul can make those runs, or he can get the ball at the top of the box and let it rip.
Yeah, this feels like something that's very tactical and something that they've worked on as a team. Like, this isn't something that is just naturally happened. Like this is a tactical adjustment that they made, and we'll see if it works.
When you have players like Cole Seiler who can move up into the midfield and really kind of be that person to stop anything that's countering, and Pollock, he likes to go up 3/4 of the way, but doesn't really commit in the final third so that he can track back and be there to stop anything. I think that gives them the confidence to keep Saul up so that he has those opportunities to strike, as opposed to like in the beginning of the year when they were kind of bringing him back towards the midfield to collect the ball.
Right. If we only had time, that sounds like a good deep dive tactics to do.
Nerd.
Maybe that'll be my next one. Yeah. Now that my D license is over and I'm done doing soccer related training sessions all the time in the digital coaching center for U.S. Soccer, I might have some time to do that now.
Whatever, nerd.
Yeah. So Jason, shall we move on to Chattanooga Red Wolves, who scored 1 against the Richmond Kickers?
Yeah, let me take a drink, because this is not. If you're a Richmond fan, go ahead and Go to the bathroom, take yourself a break because I'm sick of this. This
So
is bad.
so one thing to say is, if you want to really deep dive into some of this stuff, you listen to River City 93 and our friend Elliot, lament what's going on there, and also the Total Soccer Show's Richmond Kickers Weekly podcast. They talk about this a bit as well. Richmond, it's they make one mistake, they get scored on in the 7th minute, very early on, and then they just are not clinical. I mean, they had no shots on target. They did just like OCB. They weren't able to get the ball in very dangerous positions. They had 6 total shots. Most of them were from outside the box. They were low quality chances. I didn't see the expected goal figures, but I'm guessing that it was probably less than 0.1 expected goals, not very particularly high. And Stephen Beattie only needs one chance to score, and he's probably going to put that away if it's a high quality chance. And his goal was. We can talk about the goal in a minute, but let's stick briefly with Richmond so we can wipe our tears away from our eyes for for Elliot and our other friends down in Richmond.
Yeah, second game in a row, no shots on target. That's all I have to say. You can't put any shots on target, and it's not like they're not possessing. It's not like they're getting the ball in decent chances. They're winning in the midfield, and I'm going to dive more into it when we do bring up the goal because I think what happened in that goal is absolutely unacceptable, and I think that's their issue is that Richmond is falling asleep at times, and you can't fall asleep when you have players in this league as dynamic as they are in this league. You're not going to be able to fall asleep against a Nick Moon. That's what they did against Lansing. You don't fall asleep against Richmond. That's what Beattie's done to them twice now. You don't fall asleep in these situations, and that's what they're doing. Set pieces, falling asleep. It's just, I don't know if it's something to where they need some kind of a motivation, some kind of a bump, a new player to come in to really just get in there and change, the energy in the locker room or what. But it's exhausting watching this team give up goals the way they give them up.
So to describe the goal, which, by the way, this goal started in a very, very nice way, right? So I think at the end there was a defensive breakdown, but the beginning of this was not a particularly, it was all Red Wolves doing good things. So Sessi gets the ball on the left-hand side. He basically does a big switch, plays it on the ground to Pineda. Pineda just, takes the ball onto his left foot and has a 50-yard pinpoint cross that he just basically beats all of the Richmond kickers all the way to the center back. So I think it was probably the whole team. If you had a packing stat, it's probably like a 7 or an 8. And it ends up on the foot of reminds me who Sione. Yeah. So it ended with Sione, who Ainscough was playing out there. So someone who we've interviewed before on this show. But so Ainscough is covering him, playing right back that day because Eli Lockerbie was on the other side because Scotty Thompson was injured. So Lockerbie shifted over and was playing on the left side. He didn't have such a bad game, but the fact is you think he did?
You finish your story. Every story has two sides.
That's fair enough. Well, what we do know is that Ainscough got beat to the end line by Sione, and then he crosses the ball in, and Beattie, who's at the far post, is making a run, cuts in front of. Remind me who the center back was, because it wasn't. Tchaikovsky.
Akwe goes to chase the ball that's coming in on the cross, so he didn't have to really cut in front of anyone, and I'll talk about that in a moment.
I remember it a little bit differently because I thought he cut in front of someone, but anyway, so Beattie beats the person who's nominally covering him,
right,
and just gets in front of him, and he's wide open. But then it seems like it's within arm's reach of Fitzgerald. Of course, we don't have a great angle on it because the angle of the camera is kind of from midfield and not from the side of the 18, as which would have been a much better angle. But it looks like Fitzgerald should have been able to come out and collect it. He decides not to, maybe because he thinks one of his defenders is going to, and then Beattie's able to tap it home. I mean, Beattie had a collision with a couple of people while he's finishing this ball, but Beattie doesn't care. He's just going to finish it because that's what he does.
All right, that was the PG Disney Lion King family friend version. I want to tell you what really happened on this goal and why.
Here comes the rated R version. Do we need to put an E? Do we need an explicit tag on our?
TVMA. listen, this is what makes me mad about Richmond. Every team goes through struggles. I get it. But this goal is absolutely insane to me that they allowed. So, yes, you're right. Sissy gets the ball, has a beautiful switch. Beatty lets it go, and you've got Pineda. Now, I've been talking weeks now, the past 3 weeks, about how Pineda has been Chattanooga's game changer, right? So he is the person that has been bringing all this offense. Every goal that Richmond seems to be scoring, or Chattanooga seems to be scoring, is through Pineda. So Pineda gets the ball. It is him and Beatty next to each other. There are 4 Richmond players within those 2 players. Nobody else is around, right? So they form this little box around them. No one is within 7 yards of Pineda. So, yeah, we're talking about this beautiful 50-yard cross field, on a dime to Cito. Why does he have so much space and time to even get that cross off when you have 4 people that are marking 2 men? Okay, so that's not a problem within itself.
So you're gonna tell me then that Eli Lockerbie got caught up because he did, right? Because he was up there in the attack. And
he was watching, literally just watching, and him and Maxey are in between Beatty and Pineda, right? So Pineda crosses the ball. Fine. You didn't close in. You literally gave him 7 yards, all 4 of y'all. So I'm not going to blame anyone individually because all 4 of them gave him 7 yards. And I have a screenshot. I will post it on Twitter because I know y'all don't believe me. I'm not exaggerating. So
I believe it. I remember that. I've watched this goal about probably 10 times. So
this man crosses the ball, and as soon as he does, Beatty puts his head down and starts sprinting to get to the middle of the box. Now, when he does this, he's in between Maxey Rodriguez and he's in between Lockerbie, right? Pineda is just sitting there. So Lockerbie either has to make the decision to try to follow Beatty or stay with Pineda. That's fine. Maxey Rodriguez, ball watching. Beatty runs and nobody is around him for the whole time that he's running to the box because nobody picked him up. And I don't understand how 4 people can be marking 2 men and nobody picks up the most dangerous man on the field running to the box full speed. So yeah, he had a wide open header because Akwe, then he's watching the cross, not paying attention and assuming that Maxey or somebody has picked up Beatty. Nobody picks him up. And it's him putting his head down. As soon as he starts running, he has 30 yards of uninterrupted running. And then he's just there for an easy header. And everyone is just standing there for Richmond. And it's just, what are you doing? You cannot have 4 people marking 2 men and then allow the most dangerous person to run 30 yards unmarked into a box. It's laziness. And that's what I'm really pissed off about Richmond, because it's one to just be going through struggles, or you're getting bad luck and your shots are hitting the crossbar. You are literally sleeping on the most dangerous man on the field right then and giving the most creative player on the field all the time and space he needs to make those plays happen. Pineda with 4 chances created. Again, like I said, the reason why Chattanooga probably is having such a, offensive power that they've been having the past 5 games. I'm sick. I'm sick.
Yeah. And, again, they had the Richmond Kickers had 59% possession. Again, 20 crosses, only had 6 total shots and none on target. Letting up a goal in the 7th minute means that you're chasing them the whole time. So, and Chattanooga, I think, is, they've tightened up their defense enough that they're, happy to let the other teams have the ball. So they're not playing, they don't necessarily need the ball in order to win games and see them out. So, all right, so that was your spicy take of the show, I suppose.
I guess. I mean, it's sad. Shout out to Connor Doyle, though, again. Underappreciated, doing the dirty work. 4 tackles, 3 clearances, 2 interceptions, and winning duels like crazy. Won 8 of 10 this week. Didn't lose any aerial duels. He is a very important person to them of being able to retain that possession so that Pineda can then have 20 yards of open free space to send in a perfect cross because nobody feels like marking anybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a little shout out to Eli Lockerbie. I know you think on the goal he didn't do great, but the rest of the game I thought he did pretty well. He had 53 total passes, 89% passing accuracy, a lot of those on in the offensive half. He won 6 out of 10 duels, and he did have a chance created. So he was, I don't want to say a bright spot, but he certainly gave it a good try there. Meanwhile, Joe Gallardo did almost nothing in this game. So the Red Wolves did a really, really good job shutting him down in the midfield. And, without him creating one-on-one, you noted in our show yesterday when we were doing the draft that Joe was very good one-on-one, but he didn't necessarily have some of the other skills. I mean, the fact that he only had 29 passes, he only won 4 out of 9 duels. That's not a superstar performance from Joe on the day. So I think Coach has to maybe be, I don't know about rethinking everything, but certainly has to take into consideration
he needs to make them watch that goal over and over again. I don't understand how that happens. I don't understand 4 people marking 2 guys and none of them got picked up.
In this game, if memory serves, there was no Shanatsky, right? And there was no Scotty Thompson on the back line, right? So could it be partially that it was just, veteran presence? You have a somewhat rotated lineup. I mean, that could be part of it too. But
yeah.
I don't want to belabor this, but
I don't know. You're right. Like, and then I know Troyer came in later, Chin came in later in the second half, but it's just like, it shouldn't take a veteran to tell people hey, you should probably follow the guy that's the most dangerous player on the field.
Follow the leading scorer of the other team, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're moving on. The next match was North Texas scored 3 goals against Lansing Ignites 1. It was Colin Montgomery in the 57th, Arturo Rodriguez for North Texas in the 71st, and then Ronaldo Damas in the 73rd. And is it Pato? I know I'm gonna get yelled at.
Pato, baby.
Yeah, Pato Faz. He scored in the 83rd to at least get Lansing on the score sheet. They didn't give up. Celso had the assist on that one. Do we want to go through all the goals? I mean, Jonathan Gomez. I don't want to say he played out of his mind, but he had a great game. Yeah. He had probably the best game. I mean, one thing is I think sometimes he gets overshadowed because when Arturo Rodriguez and his brother David are both out there together, they just have such a chemistry that I think even when Gomez happens to be on the field on the left wing, he's just not as noticeable, right? Yeah. But in this game, he did a great job connecting play, getting a lot of passes. Arturo Rodriguez, again, a goal and an assist in this game as well. So hard to differentiate. And of course, Ronaldo Damas, he gets Player of the Week. I mean, should it have been Arturo or Jonathan Gomez? I mean, maybe. Sure.
Like I said, like you can literally just choose a random player from North Texas and look at their stats, and they probably had a great game.
So Colin Montgomery, a defender up for a free kick in the 57th minute. So let's talk about the 2 halves, right? Because the first half of this game was, I don't want to say it was boring, but I think it was much more even than it ended up being.
I don't think it was boring at all. I think it was
because Lansing had their chances, and for my money, Lansing probably had the more dangerous chances for sure. Yeah. And North Texas was sitting back a little bit too much. North Texas usually has that mid block. They want to win the ball like right around maybe 10 yards into their offensive half, and then go at the opposition with pace. Right. That is often how they break and try and play. And in this game, that wasn't working. Lansing was just better. Right, Lansing was just better in the first half in basically passing around that. They had a lot of long passes. Lansing even had 18 crosses. Guess what? 6 of them were successful, Jason. Yeah. They actually had 6 successful crosses, and I believe 4 of them were in the first half. So they had their chances in the box. And 5 shots on target. I'm pretty sure 3 of them were in the first half as well. So, just Lansing. What happened to Lansing then in the second half, or what adjustments did North Texas make that was different from the first half to the second half?
Well, first and foremost, Lansing should be ashamed of themselves for not starting Celso. He's coming off of 2 great games. He's a player that spreads the field, changes the way that defenders have to play. So I don't understand why Rafa started. And as great as Rafa was at directing traffic and creating a couple chances, he had 2 great opportunities to where his touch failed him in the box. And I'm not saying Celso finishes it, but at the same time, it's those things that make a difference, right? So Alex Bruce, for what he did, he was passing extremely well. And I think it was like in the first 7 minutes or something, he had a through ball to Rafa, who just misses it and would have been one-on-one and through for the keeper. And, Koifik, I think, was a big part of Lansing, kind of not doing well in the second half. I think in the first half, he was great. He had stopped Damas with a last-minute tackle, which in the 9th minute, which would have led to one-on-one and a goal. I think that the second half, that North Texas buildup just really got to them. So when you watch that second goal, right, Arturo Rodriguez has the ball literally in the middle of the field. He's on the 50-yard line, sends a great ball down the side, and then just puts his head down and sprints in the middle, and nobody picks him up. And so he runs through about 3 people, and then the cross comes into him in the top of the box, and he's wide open for an easy finish. And that's the kind of the defense is just falling apart there.
Quite frankly, I'm not sure it was such an easy finish. I mean, it was a one-time across his body inside the D.
Wide open.
With 2 players right in front of him. But yeah, there was no one within 3 or 4 yards of him easy.
Yeah, and nobody picked him up. And so when you have that whole time to run and focus, like you have someone bump you, it changes your projectile of how you're running, how you're going to set up your shot. He wouldn't be able to set up and finish the way he did had someone just knocked him off his path, right?
I think in that goal, and that was the second goal, I think everyone thought that Gomez was going to hit it across because the Ronaldo Damas and Christian Coleman were making runs, both Coleman to the near post, Damas to the far post, and I think they thought that he was going to be a low hard cross into one of them, and so they kept on dropping back, and no one, and I think there were enough defenders. I think it was a 4-on-4 basically, but no one stepped to. I think you're right. No one stepped to Rodriguez in that case, and
nobody picked him up.
Yeah, no one picked him up at all. And it was a great run from Rodriguez, too, right? Because he had to make up probably 20 yards to get there. So he was on his horse for sure.
But yeah, the fact that nobody, like I said, just bump him off of his run, right? And now you changed where he's getting the ball and how he's setting up, and now obviously it's a little more difficult for him.
Or you make him slow down, right? I mean, if you're standing right in front of him, he's not going to shoot. He'll probably, turn around and pass it back to Tessman or whoever was coming up behind.
I like how you brought up Coleman, though, because I thought he played extremely well, and I thought he did a great job of drawing defenders and spreading the field. So 3 North Texas players had 3 key passes. They had 13 overall. He was one of them. And I think he did a great job. And like you said, so when Arturo's that wide open, it's because people are following Coleman, who was directing traffic through that whole second half before he got subbed off. So I think he played a great game. And I think that's a part of why Arturo had that, space and had that time to, one touch it and have that shot.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to talk about too, though. So when we were talking about the defense, the first goal, Koifik loses his man, and I wanted to give a shout out to Damas because that's why Damas is one of the best players in this league. It's not just him finishing. He makes a run and then gets up and heads the ball, which then allows for North Texas to score off of that set piece. And then that third goal, and it's debatable. I was going to bring up what you thought, if it was offside or onside. But my theory behind this is, look, we know this league doesn't have VAR. When it's close calls like that, when it's extremely close,
you have to play
it. Yeah, and I think in Koifik lost.
And this happened in the Richmond game too, right? On that goal, you had one of the center backs that put his hand up and didn't run, right? He just didn't try to get back, and don't do that. Just play the whistle. And then these are things I tell my 8-year-olds.
Yeah, and look what happened right after. Cleveland gets a yellow for dissent, right? Like whatever he says. And then Coach Nate Miller now is missing the next game because he's cursing out the ref or whatever he's saying to the referee, and he loses his cool. Nick Moon gets a yellow because he's pushing somebody now. And obviously the game was over at that point, but it's just like at that point, it's just you're not going to be better moving forward if you keep losing your cool in games like this. You're not learning from that.
And on third goals, that is going to be 3-0. If it was 1-1 and that was going to be the winning goal or something like that, it's one thing to try and say, hey, you guys have to wake up or whatever. And in fairness, being a referee, now granted, I don't referee at this level, but if I referee a U18 or a U23 game, I mean, these are college kids, right? These are, well, North Texas's case, most of them are younger, but but the athleticism, it's yes, will you get every single call right? No, there's no way. But you try to do your best and you call the game you see. And if they thought that he wasn't offside, he wasn't offside. It's that simple.
Yeah,
So,
I just don't like, and the Nick Moon thing, for instance, that happened, before the third goal and all of that good stuff. But like, just losing your temper and hurting your team, right? So I think now Nick Moon is one more yellow away from a suspension, or
I
two.
don't remember.
Yeah,
We did get the report today. There were
we
5 or
did.
6 players on it, so
So
he might
so
have.
if he he's their most important player on the field, right? And then if for them to lose him because he's getting mad and pushing people, and they know that they have to play this weekend and they have to turn around and play forward on Tuesday, it's just it's stupid.
Right.
It's dumb, and you're hurting the whole team.
So let's move on a little bit. I just have one more question on this game. What do you think about Ronaldo Damus doing the CR7 celebration?
Listen, it's his namesake. I like it. I'm not the hugest Ronaldo fan from a personality standpoint, but if that's who he looks up to from a game perspective and he shares the name, yeah, I'm all about it.
And he's scoring about as much
I know that
CR7.
third one though was a little more exaggerated than the other ones. He's usually pretty good at exaggerating them, but I think that third one was a little bit of a shove and be like, yeah, you like that, don't you? Because he in that third goal, credit to him, he makes the run. The pass doesn't come, so he circles back and holds his run, and Koifik doesn't know where he's at. So then when the ball is passed, Koifik looks over his shoulder to make sure that Damas isn't there, and he goes, oh, well, Damas is ahead of me, so he must be offside, and he just holds his hand up.
Well, I think that's what I saw there was when Gomez got the ball, right? So Damus was offside, and but he had his hand up and said, "Hey, put me through now." And Gomez smartly said, "You might not be onside, so I'm going to take an extra touch." Takes 2 touches. As he's doing that, Damus does that run you're talking about, and that puts him back onside.
Yep.
Right. So I'm pretty sure he was onside when that happened. I mean, I understand why, the Lancet guys were upset, but you look at the replay, and I very much doubt that he was offside.
And I might be, in the minority of this, but I think that's a skill to be able to time your runs to where if it is too close for a ref to call, right? Like you can do that. Like leave it up to somebody else to make that decision and leave it up to the defender to go, I have to go out.
Why does Jordan Peruzza on TFC rarely get called for offside? Because when he is offside, he's always checking back for the ball. Right, so that's why he's rarely, if ever, called offside. And obviously the last 3 home games for them, I don't think he's been called offside at all. But he, clearly that is a skill, and that's soccer IQ, and that is something you can teach. But you also something you have to practice, right? So clearly, Coach Quill's doing a great job with those, as are the guys up in Toronto. So where do we stand? North Texas SC still at the top of the table, 2.23 points per game, with South Georgia Tormenta not too far behind them at 2.08 points per game. And then the next 6 teams. The next 6 teams are very close. Chattanooga Red Wolves in third with 1.62 points per game, down to FC Tucson and Forward Madison with 1.15 points per game. So if the TFC were to lose their next game, and either Lansing or Greenville were to win, then the Lansing or Greenville would actually jump TFC into that 4th spot on points per game, but it would be super duper tight. And if TFC were to get a tie, then they would remain in 4th place on points per game, and Richmond and OCB both have less than 1 point per game.
Yeah, that 4th spot, I'm telling you, it's going to come down to the last week or two.
Well, and here's the thing: if the Red Wolves lose and TFC were to win, then TFC actually on points per game, if they're not, I ran the numbers, now I don't remember, but they would be super close. It'd actually basically be a virtual tie for third. So so there's a lot of permutations here. So I would say it's not only that 4th spot, it's also the 3rd spot, quite frankly. But South Georgia and North Texas would have to lose a whole lot of games from now until the playoffs to be below the line.
Right.
They haven't clinched yet. I'm looking at that too. I think they each need 15 points or something like that. So which is not too many, right? I mean,
this is pretty much it. It looks like it's going to come down to who's going to be the away teams in the playoffs. I think we got the 2 home teams solidified.
Okay. Yeah, and it's possible. I mean, and Tormenta clearly can make a push to beat North Texas. I mean, they're not that far behind. I mean, North Texas, loses two, and Tormenta gets a win and a draw, and they would be right there.
And a lot of, some people might question Tormenta's offense just because the games they are winning are 1-0 or 2-1. I just think their defense so solid, that's all they need to do, right? It's the same with Chattanooga.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same with Greenville. Defenses are going to win you games in this league. So as long as you can put a goal or two, and I think that Tormenta has too many talented offensive players to not be able to do that. So I think those two teams right now are solidifying their top spots. And right now, third and fourth is anybody's race.
All right. So coming up tonight, as we record on Wednesday night, it's FC Tucson is hosting TFC2. Saturday, Chattanooga Red Wolves face off at 7 p.m. Eastern Time against Lansing Ignite. Head coach Nate Miller will be suspended for getting kicked out of that game that we just talked about. South Georgia Tormenta plays at Forward Madison. Excuse me, doesn't play at. It plays Forward Madison at 8 o'clock. And then on Sunday, North Texas faces off against Greenville at 9:45 p.m. Eastern Time. So that would be 8:45 Central. Is that after an FC Dallas game? Is that a doubleheader?
I would assume, yeah, that would make sense.
Right. So hopefully they'll have a nice crowd there to watch the kids for North Texas. I used to love going to Red Bull 2 games when they played at Red Bull Arena after Red Bull games. On Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time is Lansing versus Forward Madison, and Wednesday is OCB versus Chattanooga. So it was suggested to us that we preview some of these games a little bit more. Maybe going through all of them would be too much, but let's each pick one to go into a little bit of detail with, like what we hope to see, what we think has to happen. I noticed that in this whole week, Richmond is not playing. They have a friendly that they're going to be playing on the 9th, I think. So their next match isn't until the following weekend, until the 13th.
Probably what they need. So
yeah, exactly. They'll have a good week of training to get ready. So Jason, which match do you want to preview in a little bit more detail than we usually do?
Yeah, so my preview isn't all the way until Tuesday's matchup, but I want to preview Lansing and Madison. And the reason why I want to preview this is because I think that this is going to be a game to whoever wins this game might make the playoff, and whoever doesn't win this game probably won't. And I think because when you look, Lansing has to go to Chattanooga this weekend, right? And they don't have their coach. And Chattanooga doesn't lose at home. Yeah, they don't lose at home. And so if Lansing, doesn't get a point here, and then they go to Madison and don't get a point, it's going to be, I mean, they're getting jumped, right? Especially when TFC is playing teams like Tucson and North Texas is playing home. Tormenta's playing home this week. I think it's early in the season to say it, but that might be a do or die game for both of those teams, just because, if Chattanooga continues their run, and I think that because FC Tucson has like 8 of their last 10 games at home this season, I'm expecting them to bring in some points towards the end of the year. I think it's a big game. And I think without having Coach Nate Miller in Chattanooga, it's important, right? What do you do? When you're talking about chasing a goal, like, are you starting Celso? If not, do you bring him in as a sub? Or if Reese is doing well with offense, but not defensively, do you take him out for Hollingsworth? It's just, there's so many different things. And I think that, a lot of Lansing fans, they're kind of in cruise control right now. But this is something that should be worrisome. If they don't come out with at least a point from this weekend, they're going to be in a lot of trouble.
So let's do each team just about a minute or two, Jason. I'm going to get your opinion on this. What does Lansing have to do to beat Madison?
They have to not allow Madison to open up. And so I think they need to press. They do not need to allow Madison to have the open field to where they can run in stride. They don't need to allow the space to give Connor Manley those passes down the side to Don Smart. I think that they need to take away as much timing on the ball from Ford as they can. And I think that's how they're going to have to do it. So I would put Celso up top. I'd put Nick Moon up top. I'd put Alex Bruce, and I'd press. And then maybe you bring in Pato in the second half of the tired legs to try to score late, or maybe you bring in Toomey, for someone, and I would press and get at them. I would not give them any chance to open the field.
So I agree that I think they probably need to press. The other thing I think they need to do is figure out a way to man up on Don Smart and Paolo Jr. or whoever else is on the left-hand side. Basically don't give Madison the channels. They're too dangerous down the channels to do that.
Yep.
So make sure you have those covered. So don't push up your backs, or play 3 in the back and then have you can have your wingers press up or your wing backs press up, but make sure that you have that solidity in the back to cover that wide play.
Yep.
What does forward Madison then have to do, Jason, in order to beat Lansing?
Send in Danny Tenorio to beat that back line. I think Lansing's weakness right now is their back line is slow, and they're playing in a system where there's only 3 of them back there, and they depend a lot on.
You're trying to say that Grant Stoneman gets yellow cards because he gets beat for pace?
Oh, of course not. I would never say such a thing like that. I would never call that man a turtle. But yeah, so if you can find a player, I know Eaton likes to take the ball kind of at the top of the box and dribble in. So that's why I kind of like Tenorio to kind of try to sneak past them and try to make those runs. You saw Damas got away from Koific twice last week from this, both on a set piece and just on a regular offensive possession. So I think that's what Ford needs to do, is instead of trying to work the sides too much, try to have Paolo and Don send those balls from the side into the middle and try to get a through ball into Tenorio or whoever you put up top.
And so that went a little bit longer, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. Next time, maybe we should make sure that we actually maybe pick 1 or 2 games and we do previews for the next time. If you like that, or you didn't, let us know. And we're trying to make this podcast as user-friendly for our listeners as possible. So yeah, that's fun stuff. We'll make sure that we do another highlight next week of 1 or 2 of the matches that are upcoming. So USL came out with their mid-season awards. These mid-season awards were up for vote from the public. The semifinalists, I guess, the league picked, but the mid-season MVP went to Don Smart, and I have a note here to myself that says, "Yep." What do you think, Jason?
I think that's Ford, Atlanta, Madison United. I think this is a fan vote, and it's an obvious fan vote because it definitely is not Don Smart, and that's not a shot at Don Smart. Ooh. I think he's been the best player probably in the past month. But Arturo Rodriguez has been the most consistent player every time he stepped on the field and has beaten Don Smart pretty much in every stat line. So I guess
the way that I did it, and I did vote for Don Smart, I have to admit. Maybe a little bit of that was recency bias. But one of the reasons is because would forward Madison have the points that they have without Don Smart? And
that's true.
The answer is probably not. Whereas if Arturo Rodriguez wasn't there and you had Tessman and David Rodriguez and Pepe and Ronaldo Damas, would North Texas still be at the top of the table? If not at the top, they'd probably be second. So so when I think best player and the most valuable player could be 2 different things.
You're right. You know what? I like that. You've changed my thought. I still would go to Arturo just because I do think that Don is not the center of the team. He's the center of their attack, whereas Arturo is the center of that team. Arturo does it.
The team is basically built around him.
Yeah. Yes, because it's not like he's just sitting there offensively. He comes back, gets the ball. He leads the team in tackles. I think it's just he's incredible. So I think because of that, he's the center of that team. And when I look at MVPs, I think, like you said, I think they'd still be good, but they wouldn't be the team that they are without him.
Yeah, that's fair. For coach was Eric Quill.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with
that. Okay. Defender, Connor Antley. I still suggest that Connor Antley is not a defender. Connor Antley is a winger, and his defensive duties are incidental to his attacking duties.
I give him a defender because even though
so here's the thing that I had, the problem that I had with this, and hey, like USL, we love USL League One, we love everyone at the home office. But when you look at the defender of the mid-season defender awards and you watch the highlights, they're almost all attacking highlights.
Yeah.
It's not Kevin Pollitt like doing a great recovery run and slide tackling someone, which by the way he's done.
Right.
It's not. So anyway, they're not defensive efforts, right?
Yeah.
So so you're giving someone to vote. Hey, which of these goals from one of these outside backs did you like the best? I mean, come on, that's not defending.
24 clearances and 21 interceptions is nothing to fret about. Connor does do it defensively, and
I know he does.
But I think what makes him they're showing the highlights of him offensive, but I think he only has that offensive because of the defensive work he does. Because like we were saying, with his 3 assists, it's usually him intercepting the ball, getting up, and then being the one starting that counter attack and being the one ultimately either finishing the ball himself or crossing it into someone having the assist. So I think that's what makes him so important defensively.
Yeah, no, I don't completely disagree. I think from a pure defensive standpoint,
give me who you would have.
Well, I would go. I just named him. I mean, Kevin Politz. I mean, he's a potential. Basically, when I think of a defender, quote unquote defender, I always think of like a center back, right, as opposed to someone else. I mean, or Ualfe, right? If you want a defender, go with a D-mid, right? Go with a defensive midfielder like Ualfe, who is one of my favorite players. But of course, I'm also
funny you mentioned Kevin Politz because you didn't mention him last night for your All-Star team. But
no, I didn't because I picked Kyle Ventner and Phelps. Oh well, Phelps is another one. Like Phelps, So Politz was by the way my number 3. But Ventner and Phelps, these are all guys who are pure defenders, right? Like yes, Ventner has a couple of goals because he went up with set pieces, but generally speaking, those are the pure defenders. Whereas Connor Antley and just the way the modern game's played, right? Right and left backs are wing backs, right? So they're basically two-way players as opposed to having a more singular focus like a center back.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the one. Well, let's go to young player Peruzza. Okay,
yeah, I'm cool with that.
That's fine. It's either him or Ronaldo Damus probably, and and the fans voted for Peruzza. But goalkeeper.
Yeah.
What do we think about this? Pablo Jara, who great goalkeeper. He's done some good stuff. He has had some spectacular saves for sure. But best goalkeeper in the first half of the year.
Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, I don't know. In the great words of Matt Doyle, are you watching the game or are you just looking at the stats? Because there's no way that anyone who watches this league, shouldn't. I mean, there's of course, people who don't. But if you watch this league, you should know that Alex Mangels is the best keeper in this league, and it's not even. I mean, it's close, but it's not that close. Right. It's just. I mean, Hara has faced the least amount of shots. I'm pretty sure of all the goalkeepers in the league.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. Like having the most clean sheets does not make you the best goalkeeper.
Exactly.
It means that you have the best defense in front of you.
Defense, exactly. So I'm going to give it to the person who has saved their team week after week after week. And like I said in our All-Star show, Chattanooga would be a bottom 2 team had it not been for Alex. So easily my keeper of, I'll even say the year, unless he has a complete meltdown.
Yeah, and just to make you feel bad, it was David Goss who said that on radio. And one of my favorite quotes ever, by the way. My son and I say it all the time. Yeah. So, Jason, the U.S. men's national team match is actually already kicked off. I don't want to know the score.
Okay.
So do we have any fan questions before we get out of here?
I brought up the one about the offside at Toronto, and I think that was it.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think we're good to go.
Excellent. Well, in that case, Jason, where can people connect with you?
You can find me at Home Sweet Soccer. I do want to bring up, I did forget, shout out. So Bobby Mitchell brought up today, and we didn't talk about him on the All-Star show, Zagoro.
Oh yeah, Zagoro. Yeah. So he was on my list. He was my other left back.
Yeah. I think with Zagoro, probably the prettiest passer in the league. When his passes connect and those assists are absolutely beautiful, it's just not consistent enough. So when you compare him to Antley and Pollock and all those other defenders, he doesn't have the passing accuracy in the opponent's half that they do, and he doesn't do as much of the defensive work, winning duels in the middle. He kind of wins the interceptions and the clearances, but Pollock, Antley all have better duels won percentages and have played a lot more duels than him.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the fact is he's a starter in this league, and he probably should be, but are there 2 or 3 players ahead of him? Probably. Yeah. And that's kind of where it is. So it's not that he's not worthy. He's just
right. But I thought that was a good shout from Bobby. And so I wanted to bring that up because he is someone that has been very good this year.
That's great. So Jason is at Home Sweet Soccer. I can be found at Ira Jersey on Twitter. Thank you for listening. Please rate, review. Try that again. Please. Why don't we do this one more time? This is a nice thing about having.
You're just trying to rush to get to the game. Calm down.
I really am. Yeah. So
excited to watch the U.S. play like trash.
So Jason can be found at Home Sweet Soccer. I can be found at Ira Jersey on Twitter. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts, and check out bgn.fm for other great soccer podcasts and written content covering USL League One, USL Championship, USL League Two, NWSL, Major League Soccer, and more. Thanks to our sponsor, Golden Gold Press, the best choice to get your custom shirts, hats, mugs, and other items for yourself or your organization. Check out their amazing products at a fraction of the price of other places at goldengoldpress.com. And thanks to Roughneck Scarves, official scarf supplier of Major League Soccer, United Soccer Leagues, and U.S. Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. Jason, I will talk to you next week.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to you more than I've been talking to my grandma. I should probably give her a call and see how she's doing.
That reminds me, I better call my mother.